Hi everybody, a very warm welcome to thorough newspaper analysis for the 1st of April 2024. Now let's quickly proceed and have a look at the discussion pointers for today. So first of all, for the editorial segment, we have an Indian Express article with the title, How Supreme Court is Overseeing Conservation of the Great Indian Bustard. Here we'll see how recently the Supreme Court constituted a technical committee of 7 members for the purpose of recommending how, two conflicting interests can be balanced. So what are those interests? First is the efforts for conservation of Great Indian Bustard, which is a critically endangered species. And second is the creation of renewable energy. Secondly, we talk about the news updates, and this is going to be followed by the legal news updates for the day. So without further ado, let's start with the article. Let's first see the context of it. So the Supreme Court on 21st of March, it constituted a 7-member committee to find a balance between conservation efforts for the Great Indian Bustard and the efforts to generate renewable energy in the same regions. And by same regions, we mean the areas which is habitat for these species. What are those areas? Particularly Gujarat and Rajasthan. And in Gujarat and Rajasthan specifically also, the Kutch district and the Thar desert area respectively. Now let's talk about the Great Indian Bustard and then we dive into this entire case. So Great Indian Bustard, it is an avian species. It is classified as critically endangered by the International Union for Conservation of Nature, and this happened in the year 2011. And very sadly, currently there are less than 200 Great Indian Bustards in India, and they're mainly found in the states of Rajasthan and Gujarat. The biggest threat for these birds, it is the overhead power lines, as frequent colliding between these two entities, which is the birds and these power lines, they've resulted in the death of many of these birds. And that is why the Supreme Court has made certain observations with respect to the installation of these power lines. We'll have a look at it in a bit. So let's understand what happened in 2019, which led to the constitution of this committee. So in June of 2019, former IAS officer, Mr. M.K. Ranjit Singh, he filed the lead petition before the Supreme Court, and in this petition, he sought protection for the Great Indian Bustard. The plea, it pointed out that the habitat of these birds, it was confined to certain dry areas in Kutch district and Thar desert in Gujarat and Rajasthan respectively. However, in recent decades, these two regions, they witnessed creation of huge private and public renewable energy infrastructure, and it resulted in the construction of overhead power lines. Now, these power lines, they became the primary cause of the death of these birds. How? We'll see in these paragraphs. So essentially, before the Supreme Court, when the Ministry of Power, it submitted its affidavit in this entire matter, it also made 2-3 admissions. And whatever these, the affidavit power lines which are ahead of them from a far off distance. So what happens as a result of this? They are unable to, accordingly maneuver their flight. And when it comes to, when they are, at a very short distance from these power lines, they're not in a position, because of the heavy weight that they carry off their body, they're not in a position to change the course of their flight or maneuver over or under these power lines. So thus, they are vulnerable to collision with power lines. And in the case of low voltage line, electrocution is often the cause of their death. And in high voltage lines, their death is not although caused due to electrocution, but by the mere factum of these two colliding, which is the birds and the power lines. Now, in its 2019 judgment, the Supreme Court ordered the installation of bird diverters. We'll have a look at a picture to explain what is a bird diverter. So essentially, in 2019, when this case came before the Supreme Court, in April, of 2021, the Supreme Court gave its decision. In this decision, the Supreme Court ordered the entities concerned that you install bird diverters where overhead power lines already are existing, while leaving the door open for conversion of overhead cables into underground power lines and the installation of underground power lines for the future projects. So for installation of underground power lines in the future, the bench took note of two maps of Thar and Kutch regions which demarcated priority areas and potential areas. Now, what is to be done with respect to priority areas? These are the areas where the petitioners claimed that all power lines, they have to be undergrounded or disallowed. And for potential areas, there the power lines can be laid with proper mitigating efforts like the bird diverters. Bird diverters essentially are wheel-shaped discs with panels which reflect sunlight or moonlight, and these are attached to these power lines so that the birds, they can be alerted from a distance, from far off distance also, and accordingly they can change the course of their flight or maneuver around these power lines. So this is how a bird diverter looks like. All right. So the court ordered the respondents, who were the respondents? The central government and the governments for the states of Rajasthan and Gujarat, among others, to install bird diverters in areas where overhead lines, they are already existing. For undergrounding power lines, the bench acknowledged that this would require technical evaluation on case-to-case basis. And to conduct this analysis, the court, in its 2021 judgment, constituted a 3-member committee. It also held that any company which is seeking an exemption from installing these underground power lines in both of these areas, they will have to seek permission from the committee. Now, on 19th of Jan 2024, this year, multiple solar and wind energy producing companies, they approached the Supreme Court with applications claiming that the April 2021 order, it was interfering with their ability to set up business in Thar and Kutch areas. The central government also appeared before the Supreme Court, 3-judge bench of the Apex Court, led by Honorable the Chief Justice of India, and the central government highlighted the practical and the financial difficulties which were involved in implementation of the Supreme Court's decision of 2021. What was the difficulty cited by the central government? It stated that over 80,600 plus square kilometers, it had been identified as potential areas for the Great Indian Bustard habitat, while 13,500 plus square kilometer was identified as priority Great Indian Bustard habitat. And thus, the central government, it pushed for a balance between the conservation efforts for these birds and the creation of renewable energy. The court therefore asked the Attorney General to propose a way forward for the next date of hearing. And on 19th of March, the case was heard again. And before the Supreme Court, the ASG, which is the Additional Solicitor General, Aishwarya Bhati, she recommended the creation of a technical committee constituted by the Ministry of Power to give recommendations on undergrounding of the power lines. So senior advocate Sham Diwan, who was appearing for the petition, cautioned the government against walking back its April 2021 decision, stating that these overhead power lines, they are going to pose an existential threat for these birds. And therefore, he stated that if the Great Indian Bustard were to become extinct because of, all of these activities, then it would be the first major avian species to go extinct ever since our independence. The bench, it appeared to be sympathetic towards the center's stance that in stretch of 80,000 square kilometers plus, it would be embarked for underground. It could not be embarked for underground power lines, and suggested carving out a critical area of roughly a stretch of 6,000 square kilometers of land where undergrounding could take place. The bench also directed both parties to come up with a list of names for a committee to tackle the Great Indian Bustard issue further. Now, on 21st of March, which is when the recent development of constituting this technical committee happened, the parties returned with a list of names, and the court acknowledged that its earlier order of 2021, it was blanket directions to underground power lines in the Great Indian Bustard potential areas. This order, it may need to be updated. So the court categorically noted that this was indeed a blanket direction, and it needs to be, there may be a need to update that order. So therefore, the bench created a 7-member committee, which was also tasked with suggesting conservation and protection measures for the Great Indian Bustard, identifying area in 13,000 square kilometer as priority area, where power lines can be constructed, as well as areas that are vital for the conservation of the Great Indian Bustard. The committee, it is now to submit its report by 31st of July, and the court lifted the blanket direction against construction of underground power lines. And now we proceed to the next segment where we talk about the national news, and this is the first update. Kotak Mahindra Bank, it acquires 100% stake in Sonata Finance. Sonata Finance, it becomes a wholly owned subsidiary of Kotak Mahindra Bank, as the bank acquired 100% stake in the company for rupees 5,537 crore. Please note, Sonata, it operates across 10 states across or through 500 plus branches, holding an AUM, which is an asset under management of around rupees 2,600 plus crore as of last year. Next, we have an update about the Election Commission's recent efforts in making this election season more transparent, more trustworthy, and inclusive. So the Election Commission of India, it is keeping a close watch on the election process through an app. The name of this app is cVIGIL. Please keep a note of this name. The app, it allows citizens to report any violations of the model code of conduct that they come across and the election expenditures by capturing photos and videos. And as per the Chief Election Commissioner, again, please note down his name, Rajiv Kumar. This particular app, it empowers the citizens to report violations within a short action within a timeline of 100 minutes, which is roughly 3 hours. So let's talk about the features of this app. First is, it is streamlining the complaint resolution process. It is leveraging technology for better governance. There's enhanced accountability and trust. Next up is this update. So the insurance regulator has identified 3 entities as the D-SIIs. What is that? We'll just have a look in a bit. So the Insurance Regulator and Development Authority of India, it has retained New India Assurance Company Limited, which is one. Secondly, the Life Insurance Corporation of India, LIC. And thirdly, the General Insurance Corporation of India, which is GIC Re, as domestic systematically important insurers for the year 2023-2024. LIC, it is Life Insurance Company, but GIC Re and New India Assurance Company Limited, both of these are general insurance companies. Now, what is a life insurance company and what is a general insurance company? See, life insurance company, it essentially refers to the insurance of life of a human being. So life insurance refers to that. What is a general insurance then? General insurance means an insurance for the life of non-humans such as animals, crops, all of these, and also non-living things like our houses, then, buses, cars, all of these. Now let's talk about domestic systematically important insurers. So this concept, it was coined and introduced by the insurance regulatory body back in 2021. And in 2021-2022 also, these 3 companies were given this title or status. And similarly, for this current year also, these three same companies have retained this particular status. Let's talk about LIC. So this is owned by the government of India, and it is largest life insurance company in our country currently. If we talk about the General Insurance Corporation of India, it was set up by the government in the year 1972 after the passage of this particular act, which is General Insurance Business Nationalization Act. If we talk about the insurance regulatory body, so it was established on the recommendations of a committee, which was the R.N. Malhotra Committee. Government constituted this committee to establish insurance sector reforms in the year 1993. This has brought us to the international segment. First update coming from Kenya. Veteran Kenyan all-rounder Collins Obuya, he has announced his retirement from cricket following Kenya's defeat to Uganda in third place playoff match at the African Games. He is Kenya's third highest run scorer in ODIs, with the country being stripped of their ODI status in 2014. Another update in the sports category, Bangladesh's Sharfudullah Ibn Shahid, he becomes the first from the country, the first Bangladeshi to be inducted into the ICC elite panel of umpires. Apart from him, please remember another name, which is India's Nitin Menon. He has also entered the top tier for an unprecedented fifth term. Indian Nitin Menon, he joined the elite panel at the start of COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. He remains the only Indian in the 12-member club. Next up is an update from Florida. So the governor for Florida, Governor Ron DeSantis, he has signed a bill that prohibits minors under the age of 14 years from having social media accounts. This law, it requires parental permission for 14 to 15-year-olds to create accounts on platforms like Meta, TikTok, and others. All social media users in Florida, they must submit their identification documents to verify their ages. Now, please note, this is a part of a broader reform and broader effort to regulate the social media platforms. And this effort, it has come amid the rising concerns about the impact on youth, mental health, and the spread of sexually explicit content easily and accessible easily at such tender age via the social media platforms. These are the top concerns. Another important update coming from Saudi Arabia. So in a historic first, Saudi Arabia is set to be represented by a 27-year-old Rami Al-Kahatni at the Miss Universe 2024 pageant, signaling a very significant milestone in a country which is considered conservative throughout its history. So please remember her names and and also you may remember this fact also, that Florida is the concerned state which is come up with the nation which has come up with the state which has come up with this particular reform. And with this, we come to the legal news updates category, with this update coming from the Supreme Court. So in a crucial judgment, while allowing the enforcement of a foreign arbitral award, the Honorable Apex Court, in the case of Avital Post Studios Limited and others versus HSBCP Holdings Mauritius Limited, it held that to determine the factor of arbitral bias, court must endeavor to follow international standards than domestic ones. It is only in exceptional circumstances that enforcement of a foreign award, it should be refused on the ground of bias. So this should happen only in exceptional circumstances. Further, the Apex Court held, embracing international standards in arbitration, it would foster trust, a sense of certainty, and effectiveness in the resolution of disputes on a global scale. The discussion would persuade us to say that in India, we must adopt an internationally recognized narrow standard of public policy while we deal with this aspect of bias. And this has brought us to an end of our TNA. In case you want to get access to the free study material that LawSikho curates or the TNS slides that have been used in this video, I would highly encourage all of you to join our Telegram channel. And for doing so, you may scan the barcode here or click on the link which is given in the description. These are the point of contacts for you in case you want to get in touch with LawSikho. Thank you so much for being with us and have a wonderful day ahead and also a great month. I hope you stay productive, disciplined in your preparation.